Fragments of Silicon, now sponsoring this year's Upper Class Twit of the Year awards.
Sometimes, Galax, your brain is very mystifying.
It will be used for study later.
Yes. Anyway, welcome to another installment of Fragments of Silicon. I'm your host, Adam. Joining me, as always, is the regular crew. Let's get to the news. Let's see. Twilight, why don't you start us off this week? Seems like your sound's doing better, though we're not on Discord this time, so that might have something to do with it. Anyway, go ahead.
Well, the case of what was going on last week, I believe, is that the people for my ISP were working on the lines at a very poor time, it seems. And then my audio, not my audio, but my internet speed to me, to speak correctly this week, my upload speed was all goofed up, and my download speed was just fine though. That kept on going into Thursday, and it was finally fixed Friday night. Though it seems to be messing up again because the phone line for the same company is down, and they apparently won't be fixing that until tomorrow. So currently it's somewhat stable. Yeah, occasionally the upload speed kind of dips below 1 megabyte. Though it's well enough for me to speak right now, and hopefully that holds up for the rest of the night. Well, in other news, work has been doing well. Apparently I got a stray cat prowling around my house right now. Been feeding the poor thing, and not sure if I'm going to claim ownership of it or not. I have to wait and see. I don't think it belongs to anybody around here. Let's see here. Trying to think if there's anything else worthy of note. Well, in terms of gaming, a friend of mine who's been kind of on a Grand Theft Auto sort of kick of sorts asked me to play Saints Row the Third with him recently, and we've been doing that from some nights, and that's about it.
All right. Let me see. Galax, you're up.
Well, my parents are taking a short vacation, so I'm trying to take care of the house while they're gone. I took a few days off so I could take care of some things while they were gone. It's been very hot around here, so that's a thing. It's been making it a little bit rough to do some of the things that need to be done. Otherwise, not really a whole lot interesting going on, I don't think.
Mm-hmm.
Dad was better at Breath of the Wild this past weekend. He didn't fall off a cliff again. But we'll see how he is after missing a week, because that's the thing. Also, because of that, I started playing again on my own a little bit, though I'm not very far because I don't want to get too far ahead. Yeah, I don't think there's much else. Oh yeah, I think I mentioned about my game clock in Pokemon Sword before, but it's now officially maxed out. I've officially spent too much time on that game, but I'm still playing it. And I think that's about it.
All right. Well, Petty, it's your go.
Been a fairly quiet week other than last Thursday my mom fell at work and messed up her shoulder. It's possible she could have messed up the rotator cuff on her right side now.
Mm.
So that's fun. And for
Stupid
those
cuffs and their rotatoring.
and for those of you keeping score, this is the second time she's been injured at work.
Mm-hmm.
So that's fun.
How did it happen?
Apparently she was walking to lunch and she didn't notice a sticky patch on the floor and she tripped and fell on her shoulder.
Jeez, that sounds like a lawsuit.
Yeah.
Potentially.
Hmm. Like, I'm sure litigation will be ongoing.
Yeah, it really depends. Because apparently they're trying to get her to come back to work to do stuff, even though she can't use her dominant hand at all. So this is going to be interesting.
Of course.
I'm like,
All I'm seeing is if she ends up getting hurt more, they're probably going to put another zero on the settlement.
probably.
And as far as gaming stuff, still been playing stuff on the PS4 like Need for Speed and Tetris Effect.
And grand strategy games.
Yes.
Uh,
And also yesterday, Final Fantasy XIV finally got the 5.3 update. It was delayed due to the COVID-19 stuff, so
right.
I did some streaming of that. I'm probably going to stream the rest of the story tomorrow because I was really fucking tired today. And yeah, I think that's it from me.
All right. I guess it's my go. Let's see. Well, I suppose the big news is as of about half an hour ago, whenever he sent the text, my brother is now in Georgia, and I'd say within the day he will be, well, about 90 minutes away from me. Not exactly sure when I'm going to see him. Like, he sent a whole bunch of boxes to the place because he couldn't fit them all in. But it's apparently things like children's clothes and books, non-essential stuff. So, he'll be appearing eventually, um, but don't know when exactly because, well, he's about to complete a 3-day trip from the Midwest, and he and his family still have to unpack. He's got to start his new job. He's got a lot of stuff to do before he should really be considering, the family reunion thing. Like, I'll be here. It's just there's a lot of stuff he's got to iron out first, but see him sooner or later. Uh, hopefully they have been, keeping to the distancing and wearing masks as much as possible. Now,
Mhm.
I mean, granted, we are talking about like the eldest is 8, so kids, germ factories. Um, I've been concerned.
Mm-hmm.
It's like
Mhm.
And hopefully they avoid those places where they've banned wearing masks.
right. I'm like, you
God,
laugh, but
I was the one who put it in the Skype. I know all about it.
you know, but
Mhm.
yeah, it's like I've told him like, I'm not really happy that he's doing this now because fucking pandemic and oh right, Florida's the current epicenter of the whole thing. So, yeah, really hoping that nobody gets sick. or worse.
Mhm.
So, um, and yeah, I suppose that's about it for me. So merrily we shall roll along to the interview portion of the broadcast. And joining us this week is Russell Quinn of False Vacuum Games.
Hey there. Hi. Thanks
Hello.
for having me.
No problem, no problem. How you doing tonight?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
Doing well enough. Anyway, so how we like to get started is we like to get to know the person behind the game, behind the studio and whatnot, and we do that by asking this question: what got you interested in video games, both on a personal and a professional level?
A personal level, I guess I had a computer in my house when I was very young, back in the 1980s in England. A computer made by the BBC, and in those days, you turned on the computer and it was just a black screen with a flashing white cursor. So, so playing video games was pretty much the only thing to do on it until I learned how to program. So I've been playing games all my life pretty much. I guess professionally in the early 2000s, I worked for Sony on the development tools for the PlayStation 2 and then the PlayStation 3. So working on the compiler and the debugger and things. And then since then, I kind of have worked more in graphic design and making apps, non-game apps. And then I got into interactive storytelling, and then kind of through that, then worked myself back into video games.
I suppose to dig a bit deeper here, what roused the spark from interactive fiction? Like, what did you play that made you want to pursue that particular track?
Like initially back in 2010, when I first moved to live in the US, I moved to live in San Francisco, and I worked at McSweeney's, which is a small independent publisher in San Francisco, and I was head of their digital stuff there. And so it was very much a print-based organization, but we were really trying to figure out, like back then, maybe what the future of the book might look like. The iPad had just come out, and the publishing world was trying to figure that out. And we did a number of experiments, and then me and Eli Horowitz, who was also working at McSweeney's, we both left, and we made the Silent History, that was a geolocated novel. So there was like a main part of the story where you got like a new fragment of the story every weekday, and then there were these like optional short stories that you had to walk to like specific places on a map to read. So kind of like a very early literary book. I mean, that was reasonably successful back in 2012, and then off the back of that, we made another like a number of other projects. There was a story that was set in a fictional totalitarian state through a recipe sharing app, and it was like a functioning recipe sharing app, but like these like diary entries would bubble up and would tell a story. And then I guess I really started to get like to pay attention to the more interesting narrative video games that were out. So Kentucky Route Zero obviously was one of the first big ones that really was like text heavy, but introduced like emotion and mood so well. And then since then, things like Nights in the Woods and
a couple of text-based things. Like they really, they brought me back into like the direct world of video games after I had kind of worked in like design and publishing for a while. And yeah, so they were a big influence when I decided to tell the story that I'm telling in the game that I'm making. Then that's when I chose to do it as a video game.
Right, and in regards to the story or stories, I suppose, considering that we have technically two games, or
Right.
we've got, so we've got Linda and Joan prologue 4 months earlier, which is being showcased right here, right now, and we've got the upcoming Linda and Joan.
Right.
And the tagline here is prepare for the worst year of your life, or something along those lines.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I've noted that this is apparently based on a true story.
Yes.
So I suppose the first question in that regard is this autobiographical?
Yes, it is. Yeah. It's based on real events that happened to me and my family in the winter of 2017.
Uh-huh. Like,
yeah.
And how much of a recreation is that here in the game series? Is it 1-to-1? Are there some changed events, changed identities? How?
Yeah, it's
Go ahead.
Go on, sorry.
Yeah,
it's pretty based in reality. So it covers a year in my life when my mother's long dormant breast cancer came back, and she was still living in England, where I'm from. I live in Los Angeles now. I left the UK in 2005, so I haven't lived there for a while. And so initially, then I went back to care for her over a period of 6 weeks when she was undergoing some chemotherapy. The chemotherapy didn't work. She was given a terminal diagnosis, and so then I stayed in England and became her full-time caregiver. And then she sadly died that winter, a few months later. And then 2 weeks after my mother died, then my grandmother fell in her house. She broke her hip, and then she died during the surgery. And they were my last two immediate family members. I'm an only child. My father had died a couple of months before I was born, so my mother raised me by herself. So really, it's a story of not just like the immediacies of caregiving and grief and dealing with things after those deaths, but also what it means to like not only lose your family, but also lose like the two homes that have been there your entire life. Even like lose your connection to your homeland, right? Like visiting them was really like my only reason for going back to England. So it's really like it's a breakdown of that whole year. And I mean, rather than play as one character, you play the part of the family unit as a whole. So your role as the player is to try and keep the family unit as balanced as possible. Like there will be times when one of these three family members, the grandmother, the mother, and the son, need like more assistance. And then you will have to switch into a different family member and kind of like figure out how to help them out. So it's like the game topic obviously sounds like pretty harrowing and sad, but it's ultimately like the story of how a family unit like rallies around at a difficult time. And you play that part. So to answer your question, it's pretty directly based on real life. It's based on some journals that I kept in the period when I was back. Yeah, like I'm remodeling. I'm modeling my mother's house, my grandmother's house, from like photos that I took. The names, Linda was my mother, and Joan was my grandmother, and Russell is my name. The names of like other characters and their identities might be like changed and compounded. But yeah, like the central story is true. And then the other part that you mentioned, part one of the story, is called 4 Months Earlier, which has been released now. It's a free download. It takes around 20 minutes to play. And that is a standalone prologue. So it takes place 4 months before the events that will be depicted in the main game. And it's set on a hiking trail in Los Angeles when, in real life, my mother came out to visit me here in LA where I live for what turned out to be the final time. And then we did this walk in the park up to the observatory there. And yeah, like at that time, we didn't really know that she was that sick. She was getting some pains in her legs, but she had these like existential worries about if she became very sick, then what would happen to her, because we didn't really have any family apart from her own mother, my grandmother, who was nearly 90. So the prologue just kind of, there's like it's a gentle conversation and it's a gentle game. There's a lot of small talk, just like normal like parent-child small talk when a parent comes to visit you. Like old things come up. You're both like half annoyed with each other, half just want to have a nice time. And then yeah, like if you as the player, if you keep Linda and Russell walking within earshot, then they will continue talking, and the conversation will deepen, and then they get on to talking about what might happen in the future.
Oh. That's certainly a lot to unpack. Not gonna lie.
It is.
I mean, I guess I guess my next question is, what made you arrive at taking such a very personal, very wrenching time in your life and say, let's make a video game out of that?
Right. Yeah, those two things don't necessarily line up for many people. I know. Yeah. So I think there were two things. One was like all of this happened back in the UK, right? Like I was there by myself. I'm married, but my wife stayed here in Los Angeles to work. So I was back there for like almost a year by myself, and like going through all of these like traumatic things. Like at the end of it, my other two family members had died, and then I flew back. And like as like caring and understanding as my friends and my wife here were, I felt like very alone with like my grief and my feelings, because there was nobody that had shared it with. Like I didn't even have any siblings that were maybe undergoing like a similar type of grief. So yeah, like it was like I was trying to get back to normal. I came from like a cold, wet winter in England back to like sunny Los Angeles, and everything just felt like very surreal, and it felt impossible to return to my normal life. And so I started reading things about how other creative people, like how they dealt with trauma. And like obviously there's like a long tradition of like novelists like writing books about like things in their life, right? Like either fiction or non-fiction. Movie makers make movies. Like lots of people turn their personal stories into media, like both as a way for them to process it, but also for a way for them to share it. So so other people might be able to lay their story next to theirs, right? So like, it's less about like an empathy machine, but it's more about like parallel stories and like taking things from them, I think. So I felt this urge, this need to both like process what had happened to me more, and also because I felt so alone with what had happened, to share it. And I also saw a need that these events that had happened, like a lot happened to my family in a short space of time, but they're like universal events that everybody would experience from one side or another, right? So like it's a universal story that doesn't tell that much. So I wanted to tell that story, but like, how do I tell it? Like it's like I'm not a movie maker, I'm not a filmmaker. I'm not really a writer. Like I have worked in interactive storytelling. I can design things, I can 3D model things, I can program, I can make products. So the most like direct route for me to tell this story was to make it by myself, using the skills and the tools that I had, which was, was interactive things. I wanted it to be like a richer, more immersive experience than previous things I had done. So, yeah, like video game just seemed like the obvious thing for me, and that's how I started down this road, I guess.
And well, I suppose the next question is, how has it been revisiting all of this, not just through the lens of video game, but given the time, like it's been what, 2 years since it ended?
Yeah.
How are you feeling about the whole thing, in the here and now?
Yeah, it's been so like initially, I guess I started working this in like the summer of 2018. And I said pretty much like almost when I got back, but I was just doing it as a part-time thing. I was still freelancing. I've now been working on it full-time for like 6 months. So like initially it was just, it was very comforting to have time to like spend time in that world, to like spend time with my thoughts. It was very comforting to like 3D model my mother's living room. Like those spaces had now gone. The houses had been sold. Like the new owners had knocked down walls, had changed things, had modernized things. So it felt like I didn't feel able to move on until I had properly processed what I had been through. And initially, making this game was a space to do that, and so it felt, it was like wallowing in it, I guess. But it was processing it for me. As time has gone on, then I guess, which was one of the intended outcomes, maybe, like it has given me distance between what happened and my feelings about it. Like I'm now, I've spent like so much time with this story that I can like talk about it in in like concrete terms, and it doesn't feel like emotionally wrenching to me. Like what happened is still like a personal story inside me, and it still feels raw at times. But I have like a good amount of distance between like the events, the story, and my feelings. So I feel much more like in control. So I guess like the process of making it so far has been like therapy, maybe. Although I will say that in like the week before I launched the prologue, that came out almost like 1 month ago. Yeah, then it really did start to dawn on me, like as I was about to release it and make it public. They're like, oh yeah, like all of these like strangers are gonna play it, like my friends are gonna play it, and yeah, like the night before it went live, there was some like panic, some existential panic on like what this meant. But like the experience of releasing it has been wonderful. I've received so many like emails and comments from just like complete strangers who have like going through like similar things with their parents or they are parents, and they see like and they relate to like the naturalistic dialogue in the game, and they recognize all of like the subtle points. When like somebody like writes an email and like pretty much it tells me what the prologue means to them, and they hit like every point that I intended to make. It's extremely moving. So the experience has been good.
That's good to hear. So it sounds like the reception to the prologue has been very positive. Like, now, I'm wondering why the prologue exists in the first place. Was there a particular reason that this part of this story needed to be told in this particular space?
Yeah, it came from a couple of different reasons. One, even though I have made a bunch of like interactive things before, like I had never actually shipped a game in a game engine. So I never shipped anything in Unity, for example. The timeline for the main game was like 2.5 years. Like my development plan was going to take about 2.5 years. It's going to come out in 2022. There's a big risk to just like work that long and you've never actually shipped anything on these platforms that you are working in, right? It's also kind of, it's like demoralizing to have that hanging over you too. So I like decided to make this like standalone thing that would, like initially it was going to be like a lot smaller scope than it turned out. But I was going to make this thing and then I was going to ship it as proof that, it was proof to myself that I could do it. And so I ended up shipping it for iOS, for Mac, and for Windows on Steam, on itch, on the iOS App Store and the Mac App Store, which with hindsight was probably overkill to have a simultaneous launch on all those platforms and game stores on the same day for a solo developer. But at least I went through that process, so I now have like proven to myself that I can do it. But also it was, I'm now like actively seeking a publisher for the main game. So like being able to release this standalone prologue as both like a way into the story, but also like a proof that I can do all these things by myself. And also, if like anybody who like discovers the project in this time, then there's this like playable thing that they can download and try, right? Like there's not just a concept trailer. There's this interactive thing. But then once I got into it, it really did start to grow out as really like a standalone part. Like I really fleshed out the ending. There's a if you get like the biggest, most dramatic ending, there's there's a song, there's a big a spectacle. I put in like a brand new scene with where Linda and Russell sit down on a bench. It became much more of like a standalone meditation, like the parent-child relationship when they are separated, which with the COVID-19 outbreak, like had some more like universal appeal, maybe. So many people are being kept away from their parents, like even if they live in the same town, because you guys were talking about earlier, there's like new things to think about. So yeah, maybe it struck from them. But like thematically, it now feels important that these two things are kept apart. The main game will be much more of a point-and-click adventure game. Even like an RPG, there will be, like as I said, you switch between the three characters, you have to keep the family in balance, which will be measured with various health meters and tasks, and neither will be puzzles. Whereas the prologue is it's a very different mechanic. Like you're essentially walking Lynn and Russell up this hiking trail for like 15, 20 minutes. And you have to keep them walking near each other. But also the main game will take place in like small houses back in England in this like cold, wet winter in a very like a claustrophobic atmosphere. Where both in terms of like the physical spaces, but also like as the game progresses, the events will close in on the characters. Whereas the prologue, as you've seen, is it sets on like a beautiful sunny day in Los Angeles on a wide open hiking trail in nature. So, but my hope is that will help to contrast the shift into the main game when the main game is released, where that feeling of claustrophobia happens. So in summary, to answer your question, it began as a challenge, as a thing for me to do to prove myself to me and potential publishers and an audience, and then it really grew out into this like a very self-contained standalone experience.
And so has releasing this boosted your confidence in regards to the main game?
I definitely, I've learned most of like the skills in Unity that I think I need to now make the main game. I know that I can ship it on these platforms and all these game stores. I've gone through a PR cycle. The prologue itself, in a way, is PR for the main game. The prologue is a free download, so it's it exists to draw people into the project as a whole. As a solo developer, just going through that whole cycle one time, I think, it can just build confidence.
Okay. There's another question in regards to the overall structure of the game. Is are you concerned that people might not take to the genre shift because the prologue and the main game are ultimately going to be two very different things from a gameplay perspective?
Yeah, it's the main game will expand on the game mechanics. They will give players more to do, more to think about, more agency, more control. But the graphical style will be the same. It will still be like a lot of narrative choices. And I don't think that people would want to play like a 3-4 hour game where you're just walking and keeping the two characters within earshot. I think when people finish the prologue, they're probably not eager to carry on with that same mechanic. Like that's like a 15-minute mechanic. But hopefully they're attached to the conversational dialogue, the characters, the story, the graphical style. So I don't feel like I'm taking anything away from the prologue and the main game. I'm just I'm creating like this expanded world, these expanded mechanics, which ultimately are just to get to know the characters more.
Okay, and digging a bit deeper into the main game, a bit of information here is apparently so. The journey is what kind of changes in this interactive fiction as the ending is predetermined. There is only one ending. So I
Right.
suppose the question here is, what exactly is the incentive to explore the dialogue options outside of curiosity or something like that?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So as you said, like the ending is known up front, right? Like two of the three family members will die, will no longer be there. So it's not like many narrative games where like maybe you're promised like multiple endings, the actions that you have can change things. And this kind of mirrors real life where like if you or somebody that you care about gets a terminal diagnosis within like a few months, like there's not much that you can do to change that, right? Like life is on rails between now and then, but you quickly realize that like you still have to live in that period. You still have to find comfort. You have to share stories. You have to think about the future of the people that will survive you. So there are so many like decisions that you can make to improve the quality of life. To like the family keeps on going, like in this weird dead space. So as the player, you really get to like to choose about like what types of things, like what type of balance you want from the family in that time. Like there's this kind of like intergenerational triangle of worry, right? There's like at this point there's the mother that has a terminal diagnosis, and clearly that is extremely sad. And her mother, the grandmother, is worried about her, and her son is worried about her. But also the grandmother and son, they have their own difficulties. The grandmother is old. She lives in a town over. She's not really able to like physically help. So there's a lot of like guilt and worry that she can't help. Like she's worried about her grandson. The grandson is worried about his grandmother. Even like Linda, the mother, who is sick, is worried that like her son isn't coping being the caregiver. And this all like bubbles up in families with like nice conversations, with jokes, with like spending time with nice memories, with listening to old music, maybe. Like everyone knows, like everybody is worried about like each other for different reasons. But there's so much that happens to keep people going, even though the ending is kind of known, the ending is sad. But there's still a lot of like of joy and tenderness in those times. So as the player, you will have a lot of agency over that. There will be like straightforward tasks that you will be given, which you will have to solve in like tons of puzzles. But there will also be these what I call like emotional tasks, which will not be so straightforward. Like you won't get like you must do this. Like you will just be told that the one character like feels this way maybe, and then you can choose to then figure out how to make them feel better. So like maybe Linda is feeling sad for some reason. Maybe like you switch into Russell and like you put on some old music from Linda's youth, and then they sit there and they enjoy it. And Linda tells a story about an old time or something. Maybe like Joan, the grandmother, is feeling lonely, so like she has an iPad. She uses an iPad, so you play an online game of Scrabble with her. So there's really like the fact that the ending is known, which mirrors real life, is as I think is interesting because it gives you this big window of like you still have to live, you still have to make choices. and there will be a lot of things to explore and learn about the characters more, but also have agency in their feelings and their well-being.
Well, that certainly does sound like a lot. Now, given what you've said about the game so far, the main story sounds like it's going to be a few orders of magnitude larger in just about every area than the prologue, which is to be expected.
Mm-hmm.
But you're also a solo dev.
Yeah.
And you're looking at releasing this game in 2 years. Do you think you'll be able to, reach that goal in 2 years?
Yeah, I mean, it's, and I think like technically I can do it. That's not my worry. Like, yeah, I mean, I'm currently, I'm self-funding this from my savings. So I do hope to eventually find a publishing partner to help out. But I can always do some more freelance work like in between. So yeah, I don't remember on my roots, but like as I was saying, like making and shipping the prologue has given me the confidence that I can technically do it, that I can make a product, that I can ship it. And yeah, so I think I'm pretty confident that it will hit 2022, even if it's the last month of the year. But that's it's on track so far.
Well, certainly wish you luck in that endeavor. But it's also, I won't be surprised if it gets delayed to like 2023 because, well, making video games is hard. Like,
right. Yes, it is. It is difficult.
Right. So I'm going to see if my colleagues here have any questions for you at this point.
Okay.
I think mine have been answered.
Might have been answered.
Yeah, I think I can't really think of much of the questions, but it's certainly an interesting way of making a game is an interesting way of going about dealing with some tough circumstances. So I'm glad that seems to be working for you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
Right. Indeed, it's certainly an intriguing project. Unique as well. Like, this is not subject matter you typically find in video games for pretty obvious reasons. Right. And enjoy. I played the prologue this morning, and I enjoyed it for what it was. And I'm certainly intrigued to see how the main game shapes up, and maybe we'll have you back on the program in a couple years when this game is more fully formed.
Yeah, I would be happy to keep in touch.
Indeed. Anyway, so, but at this stage, we'll wish you luck on not only getting the game up and running, but finding a publishing partner, and hopefully things go smoothly in that area. Anyway. So thank you for appearing on our program and taking time out of your schedule, and looking forward to seeing what's next. Right. So
of course. Yeah, thanks.
No problem. So the game is Linda and Joan Prologue. 4 months earlier. It is currently available for free on Steam, Mac OS, on the Mac App Store, and iOS. It's only 20 minutes long, there, give or take, and there is a bit of replay value. There's a new game plus mode, if you will, in the sense that you have to control both characters at once. So there's anyway, and yeah, the main game, Linda and Joan, is currently slated for 2022. So Petty Fan, play us to the next segment. welcome to the topic of discussion. So as mentioned last week, this week we're talking about Pilot Wings. I suppose next week we would be talking about the Sony Flight Simulator, equivalent thereof if Sony had ever done that thing.
I was about to say, did they do one? Did I miss something?
As far as I know, they did not. They did nothing even close to Pilot Wings or Microsoft Flight Simulator, which is a bit weird if I think about it, because, figure that's the kind of thing that they would have jimmied together at some point, but, they didn't. So, anyway, Pilot Wings. Yeah, so this is Nintendo's... it's called an amateur flight simulator. Simulator's a bit of... It's doing a lot of...
It's nowhere near as precise of a mechanical simulator. There is no way that you can learn to hang glide or fly an auto gyro or a plane or anything by playing Pilot Wings, and jetpacks and wingsuits don't really exist.
Right. So it's a lot more what we would call arcadey. It's a bit odd to apply to a simulator, but there it is. Like, it's a very Nintendo product. Nintendo's never been really concerned about reality. They're more about, is this shit fun?
Mm-hmm.
And in terms of Pilot Wings, your mileage is going to vary, because Pilot Wings is a very difficult game series, at least the ones I played. I don't know about Pilot Wings Resort. I've never played that one. I can only assume that one's a bit more casual than the other Pilot Wings games, because Pilot Wings Resort is weird, because it's, even though it's called Pilot Wings, it's also not Pilot Wings. That is to say, the base game is actually from Wii Sports. Literally, it is a stage and a mode from Wii Sports Resort. Only it's been taken and spun off and expanded and made into its own thing. Like I said, it's weird. Anyway, though in spite of its amateur flight sim gameplay, that's not the real purpose of Pilot Wings usually. It's like Pilot Wings gets busted out whenever Nintendo needs a tech demo game. And they're pretty consistent with it.
The original Pilot Wings was extremely, hey, we have this thing called Mode 7. Look what it can do.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly not the only launch game that did this thing. It's like F-Zero was also, hey, look at our Mode 7. But, at least F-Zero got to develop into its own series that was more, that went beyond just showcasing graphics in various ways.
And F-Zero is also trying to be fast, which Pilot Wings is not particularly.
No, F-Zero is very much the opposite of that. It's a lot slower. It's a lot more deliberate, as you'd expect a simulation game of any sort to be. You're not going to be hang gliding at 200 miles an hour or whatever. But yeah, Pilot Wings was created to showcase Mode 7 graphical details and whatnot. Pilot Wings 64, this is the jump to 3D. It's showcasing what the Nintendo 64 can do in terms of 3D that, what Mario could not explore, or Wave Race. I'm like, gonna say that Pilot Wings 64 is decidedly less successful in that endeavor, given that, that kind of faded fast. And Pilot Wings wasn't really heard from again until Resort. Um, uh,
Pilot Wing 64 also introduced a few different characters for some reason.
well, yeah, Pilot Wing 64 had characters. Like you were not like you had an avatar, but you weren't a character of any sort. And Pilot Wing 64 also introduced classes to the mix. That is to say, some of the characters were light, some were medium, some were heavy. Like, and they had interesting definitions of what a heavy character contended with. I'm like, hint, one of the, the heavy girl's name in Japanese was like Hooters or something like that. Yeah.
Everybody's name was bird based.
Mm-hmm. I'm like, they were making it very explicit why she was a heavy character. But as far as the games themselves, once again, I have played Pilot Wings and I've played Pilot Wings 64. They can be relaxing, like especially Pilot Wings 64. It depends on the mode. Like for pure casual, almost lo-fi beats levels of relaxation, that's the Wingman. Granted, that is the hidden mode of
it's basically
transportation.
after you've succeeded at most of the challenges, if not all of the challenges, you gain the ability to just fly freely around the island.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you don't have any real goals. You don't have any real anything. It's just something to relax to. Or take pictures if you wish to do that as well.
That was one of the some of the challenges in the game were based on taking pictures of certain things, if I recall correctly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that was like in the gyrocopter. As well, like
I've just been reminded that I think the gyrocopter has like missiles or something, and you can shoot the mini Mount Rushmore, and one of the faces turns into Wario.
I think that's actually in the Human Cannonball event.
Is it?
Yeah, that's taking place over not Mount Rushmore, and yeah, if you shoot the Mario face, it'll turn into Wario. Like, and yeah, so Pilot Wings is basically a mini game collection, in terms of its structure. Like, you play an event, you try to do the best you can, and you get graded on it accordingly. Like the first two games, you got your standard bronze, silver, and gold. And now, in terms of Pilot Wing 64, there are what they call three main events. That's the three that are available at the beginning. And then there are the three sub-events that you unlock via medals. And the Birdman is actually unlocked via stars, if I'm remembering correctly. Like, I will say I do think Pilot Wing 64 was the much better game, mainly because it was a lot more fleshed out. Like, really, like, it's
Pilot Wings the original was good use of Mode 7 as it is, but but Mode 7 is still only actually so good at, for example, giving you a good reading of the depth when you're trying to land on a target zone with a parachute.
Like, well, it's also, there's more game in Pilot Wing 64, and there are character classes, and it just feels like the most complete package. Once again, Pilot Wings Resort feels a lot. It feels rushed, from what I understand. Like, it's very low on content. Apparently, it's considered to be a lot more shallow than the previous Pilot Wings games. Once again, I can only go on what other people have said because, well, like a lot of people, I did not pick up Pilot Wings Resort. Like there is a reason why the 3DS launch lineup was considered to be pretty weak.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because between this, Steel Diver, and Nintendogs plus Cats, they didn't exactly have a lot of heavy hitters. Now, you would think Nintendogs and adding Cats to the mix would have been a sales juggernaut again, but no, it was not. It did decently, but you'll note the series hasn't been back since then.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and mind you, these are the 3 games that have come out. There have been other attempts to um, jolt Pilot Wings alive. Most notable, most notably, if I'm remembering correctly, Factor 5 during the Wii era was pitching a Pilot Wings game, and it actually got very far into development. First as a Pilot Wings thing, and then it became Nintendo ultimately rejected the game, so they decided to take it into its own thing, called, like, if I'm remembering correctly, We Fly. But it never got released because, well, Factor 5 ran into a lot of financial difficulties and ceased to exist in that capacity. And I think there might have been other attempts, like on other Nintendo platforms, though I don't think we know about those. I think there was a rumor that somebody was trying to do a Pilot Wings game on the GameCube, but rumors are rumors. And as far as a Pilot Wings game on the Nintendo Switch, if it just going by the patterns of history, if Nintendo wasn't offering up Pilot Wings at launch, they're probably not going to offer up a Pilot Wings game for that platform.
Yeah, they're usually launch titles.
Well, it's like literally all 3 of these have been launch titles, so they may break the pattern, they may change the code, but just going by their own history, it's like we didn't get Pilot Wings Switch, so that's probably not a priority. And also, in terms of where Pilot Wings ranks in terms of the grand Nintendo franchise spectrum, somewhere in the middle. It seems to be a respected enough franchise, but it's not like Star Fox or F-Zero or Earthbound or insert other Nintendo property here that
you don't usually see people begging for a new Pilot Wings game.
Yeah, it's like, if we get a new Pilot Wings game, that's nice, but there is no frothing rabid fan base, or if there is, they are the quietest one I've ever encountered.
And we need more like them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's about all I have to say about Pilot Wings. A bit of a shallow discussion, but it's also a bit of a shallow game series.
Mm-hmm.
It's the mold. So that'll about do it for this installment of Fragments of Silicon. The week ahead. Okay. Somebody's breathing really
I think
heavy.
that's Gullix.
Sorry.
Anyway.
My ear.
Yeah. So coming up, no Friday show this week. No Friday show currently scheduled for the rest of the month. They may change. If I get a guest that that can do the show, say next week or whatever. And that's happened before. But just going on what's currently slated. Anyway, so the Sunday game reviews. Coming up, we will have game reviews on Chicken Bomb, which is basically Bomberman but chickens. And also RPG elements. It's actually less interesting than what I described there. Distraint 2 for the Nintendo Switch. So Galax is taking another trip into that particular series. Like Stellaris Console Edition for the PlayStation 4. Like, and Teenage Blob, which is a mashup of about 6 mini games combined with 6 songs. Like, the game is really upfront about, hey, this band made 6 songs and this game developer made 6 mini games. Let's smash them together. The results are decidedly okay. Like, you know, it's definitely more impressive as an artistic endeavor than an actual game. More on that on Sunday. So, until then, I shall wish you good gaming.